The smoke filled her lungs before the screams began, and by the time Katherine Foster understood that her family's manor was burning around her, the ceiling of the east wing had already collapsed. She stumbled through the hallway, her nightgown soaking up ash and heat, her bare feet blistering on floorboards that had become griddles. The paintings of her ancestors watched her flee with oil paint eyes that bubbled and wept in their frames. Someone was shouting her name from below, but the roar of the fire devoured the voice before she could identify it. Katherine pressed her hand to the wall to steady herself, then jerked it back with a hiss as the plaster burned her palm. The main staircase was gone, consumed by a pillar of flame that rose like a demon through the center of the house. She turned toward the servants' stairs, but a beam crashed down in front of her, sending up a fountain of sparks that singed her eyebrows. Her eyes streamed with tears that evaporated almost as soon as they formed. She couldn't breathe. The smoke was too thick, too hot, and her legs were giving out beneath her. She sank to her knees on the landing, and through the window beside her she saw figures on the lawn. Her mother, wrapped in a blanket, her younger brother being restrained by 2 firefighters as he tried to run back inside. The sight of them safe should have brought relief, but all Katherine felt was a vast, crushing loneliness. They had made it out, she had not. The window exploded inward. Glass rained down around her, but she didn't feel the cuts. All she felt were hands impossibly cold against her burning skin, lifting her as though she weighed nothing at all. She tried to focus on the face above hers, but the smoke had stolen her vision. She saw only white, pale as bone, and eyes that gleamed like mirrors in the firelight. Then they were falling, and the flames fell away above them. Katherine's stomach lurched as they dropped from the second-story window. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. They should have hit the ground. They should have broken into pieces on the cobblestones below. Instead, they landed with barely a sound, and the arms around her didn't falter for even a moment. "I have you," a voice said, low and accented with something old, something that didn't belong to any country she could name. "You are safe." She wasn't safe. Nothing about this was safe. But the hands holding her were steady, and after the chaos of the fire, that steadiness was the only thing keeping her conscious. She tried to turn her head, to see who had caught her, but darkness was crowding in at the edges of her vision. "Stay awake," the voice commanded, and there was such authority in it that her eyes snapped open despite herself. "Look at me." She looked. Even through the haze of smoke and shock, she could see him clearly. His skin was alabaster, so pale it seemed to glow in the orange light of the burning manor. His hair fell past his shoulders, white as fresh snow, and his features were sharp enough to cut glass. High cheekbones, a strong jaw, lips pressed into a thin line of concentration. But it was his eyes that held her. They were silver, bright, and inhuman. With a predatory intensity that should have terrified her, she knew what he was. Everyone knew the stories. Everyone knew that vampires walked among them in the modern world, hidden in plain sight, bound by ancient laws that kept them from preying on humans too openly. She had never seen one before tonight, but there was no mistaking him for anything else. "You're a vampire," she whispered, and her voice came out raw and broken. "I am." He didn't slow his pace as he strode across the lawn away from the burning house. "And you are injured. Put me down." "No." The word was flat, absolute, and it sparked something in her chest that felt almost like anger. "I can walk. Put me down. Your feet are burned. You have inhaled too much smoke. You will collapse if I release you." His arms tightened around her, one beneath her knees and one supporting her back, and she realized with a jolt that he had no intention of setting her down at all. "Be still. Who are you? What were you doing here?" "My name is Lysander Drakul. I was passing by when I saw the flames." His gaze flicked down to her face, then away, toward the crowd gathering near the fire trucks. "Your family is there. I will bring you to them." But he didn't. Instead, he turned sharply to the left, carrying her past the crowd, past the emergency vehicles, past the line of oak trees that marked the edge of the property. Katherine tried to protest, but her lungs wouldn't cooperate. Each breath felt like swallowing broken glass. "Where are you taking me?" she managed. "Away from the chaos. You need silence and stillness to recover, not the panic of humans running in circles." He spoke as though humans were a different species entirely, and she supposed to him they were. "There is a car waiting. I don't want to go with you. I need to see my family. They believe you are still inside the manor." His voice was gentle now, almost regretful. "They will search the ruins when the fire is extinguished. By then you will be healed, and you will return to ease their grief. But first you will allow me to tend to your wounds." "I didn't agree to any of this, I am aware." He reached a sleek black car parked half a mile down the road, so new it gleamed even in the darkness. The door opened without him touching it, and Katherine glimpsed a driver in the front seat, pale and silent as a ghost. Lysander slid into the back seat, with her still cradled against his chest, and the door closed behind them with a soft click. "Drive," he said, and the car began to move. Katherine tried to sit up, to put space between herself and this stranger who had saved her life, but now seemed determined to kidnap her. Her body refused to obey. The adrenaline that had kept her moving through the fire was draining away, leaving only pain and exhaustion behind. She sagged against Lysander's chest, hating herself for the weakness, hating him for witnessing it. "This is insane," she muttered. "You can't just take me. I can and I have." There was no arrogance in his voice, only fact. "You are in no condition to make decisions about your own welfare, therefore I am making them for you." "That's not how this works. I'm an adult, I have rights, and I am a king." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. "Your human rights are irrelevant when weighed against your survival. I will return you to your family when you are well. Until then, you will accept my protection." Catherine's head was spinning. A king. He had called himself a king. She had heard rumors, of course, whispers about the vampire hierarchy that governed the immortal world. There were lords and ladies, covens and courts, but above them all sat the kings, ancient creatures who ruled their kind with absolute authority. She had never believed those stories were literal. She had assumed they were metaphors, titles without real power. Looking at Lysander Drakul's face, she realized she had been wrong. "Why?" she asked. "Because it was the only question that mattered. Why did you save me? Why do you care if I live or die?" He was silent for a long moment, his silver eyes fixed on something she couldn't see. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than before, almost vulnerable. "Because when I saw you in that window, surrounded by flames, I felt something I have not felt in 3 centuries, fear. Not for myself, but for you, a human I have never met, a woman whose name I did not even know." He looked down at her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "I do not understand it, but I will not ignore it." Katherine didn't know what to say to that. She didn't know what to think. Her life had been normal until an hour ago. She was 23 years old, fresh out of university, living in her family's estate while she figured out what to do with her degree in art history. Her biggest concern this morning had been whether to accept a job offer at a local museum or hold out for something more prestigious in the city. Now she was being carried through the night by a vampire king who claimed to feel some inexplicable connection to her. It was absurd, it was terrifying, and yet some small traitorous part of her felt safe in his arms. "Where are we going?" she asked quietly. "My home. It is not far." He shifted her weight slightly, adjusting his grip so that her head rested more comfortably against his shoulder. "You will have your own room, your own space. I will not harm you, Katherine Foster. I give you my word. How do you know my name?" "Your brother was shouting it. The whole county knows your name by now." There was something almost amused in his tone, though his expression remained serious. "You are the daughter of Jonathan Foster, are you not? The man who made his fortune in real estate and historic preservation?" Yes, she didn't bother to ask how he knew. Vampires had their ways of learning things, or so the stories said. "Is that why you saved me, because of my family's money?" "No." The word was sharp, almost offended. "I saved you because the alternative was unthinkable. Whatever wealth your family possesses is meaningless to me. I have lived long enough to acquire more gold than I could spend in 10 mortal lifetimes. I do not save lives for profit, Katherine. I do it because I choose to." She believed him. She didn't want to, but she did. There was something in his voice that rang with absolute honesty, and she had always been good at reading people. It was a skill she had honed over years of navigating her family's social circles, where lies were currency and truth was a rare commodity. Lysander Drakul was many things, but she didn't think he was a liar. The car turned onto a narrow road that wound through dense forest. Katherine watched the trees rush past the window, dark shapes against a darker sky. The fire was miles behind them now, a fading orange glow on the horizon. She wondered if her family was still searching for her. She wondered if they thought she was dead. "I should call them," she said. "My mother will be frantic. Your phone is ash." Lysander reached into his coat and pulled out a slim black device that looked like it cost more than her car. "You may use mine when we arrive. For now, rest. You have been through an ordeal. I'm not tired. You are exhausted. Your body is simply too flooded with shock to realize it yet." He adjusted her position again, and she realized that he hadn't set her down since pulling her from the fire. His arms showed no sign of strain, no tremor of fatigue. He held her as easily as she might hold a pillow. "Sleep if you can. I will wake you when we reach our destination." "I don't even know you. How can I sleep?" "You trust me enough to let me carry you. That is a start." His voice dropped to something almost hypnotic, low and soothing. "Close your eyes, Katherine. I will keep you safe." She didn't mean to obey. She didn't want to show that kind of vulnerability in front of a stranger, let alone a vampire king. But her eyes were so heavy, and his heartbeat was a slow, steady rhythm beneath her ear. She could hear it, impossibly, through the layers of his shirt and coat. She had thought vampires' hearts didn't beat, but his did, sluggish and deep, like the pulse of some vast ancient creature. Against every instinct, Katherine Foster closed her eyes and let herself drift. She woke to the sensation of movement, Lysander's arms still around her as he carried her up a flight of stairs. She blinked, disoriented, and found herself staring at walls made of dark stone, lit by lanterns that flickered with real flame. The air smelled of old wood and older magic, a scent she couldn't quite identify but that made her skin prickle with awareness. "Where are we?" she asked, her voice thick with sleep. "My home." Lysander glanced down at her, and something softened in his expression. "You slept for 20 minutes. We are below the city now in the old quarter. These passages were built centuries ago, long before your ancestors arrived on this continent. They belong to my kind now." Katherine tried to process that. Below the city, old passages. She thought of the subway tunnels, the maintenance corridors, the buried ruins of earlier settlements that sometimes appeared in news articles about urban development. She had never imagined that those forgotten spaces might house an entire vampire civilization. "It's real," she breathed. "All of it. The stories about vampire society, the hidden courts. As real as you are." He pushed open a heavy wooden door with his shoulder, revealing a room that took Katherine's breath away. It was large, easily twice the size of her bedroom at the Manor, with high ceilings and walls lined with bookshelves. A 4-poster bed dominated one side of the space, draped in deep blue silk that seemed to shimmer in the candlelight. A fireplace crackled on the opposite wall, and through an open doorway, she glimpsed a bathroom with a massive clawfoot tub. It was beautiful. It was also unmistakably a cage. "You're not going to let me leave, are you?" she asked. Lysander carried her to the bed and finally set her down on the silk covers. Katherine's body ached as she lost the support of his arms, muscles protesting after being held in one position for so long. She looked up at him, at his pale, perfect face and his silver eyes, and waited for his answer. "I will let you leave when you are healed," he said. "Not before. Your feet alone will need at least a day to recover, and that is with the aid of my personal physician. Your lungs will take longer. You could have died tonight, Katherine. You nearly did. Forgive me if I am unwilling to risk your life a second time simply to observe human protocol. You can't keep me prisoner because you're worried about my health. That's not how this works. Then tell me how it works." He pulled a chair from beside the fireplace and sat down, facing her. His movements were fluid, graceful, entirely inhuman. "Explain to me why I should release you into the care of paramedics who will pump you full of drugs and send you home to recover in isolation. Explain why that is preferable to remaining here, where I can ensure your safety and your comfort. Because I have a family. Because I have a life. Because you don't own me just because you pulled me out of a fire. I do not claim to own you." His voice was patient, as though he were explaining something to a child. "But I do claim the right to protect what I have saved. It is an old law among my kind. If we save a life, we are responsible for that life until it is out of danger. I did not make this rule, but I am bound by it, as are you now." Katherine stared at him, frustration and fear warring in her chest. "That's convenient. You get to play hero and kidnapper at the same time. I am neither. I am simply a man who could not stand by and watch you burn." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, and the movement brought his face closer to hers. "I understand your anger. I even respect it. But I will not yield on this matter. You will remain here until you are well enough to walk without pain, to breathe without coughing. Then, and only then, will I return you to your family." "How long?" 3 days. Perhaps 4 if your recovery is slower than expected. 3 days. 4 at most. It wasn't a life sentence, but it felt like one. Katherine looked around the room, at the books and the fire and the luxurious bed that probably cost more than her tuition. She could scream, she could fight, she could demand to see a lawyer, call the police, make this vampire king regret the day he decided to interfere in her life. But she was so tired, and her feet hurt so badly, and some part of her, the part that had felt safe in his arms, whispered that maybe, just maybe, he was right. "Fine," she said, and the word tasted like defeat. 3 days. "But I want to call my family tonight. I need them to know I'm alive." "Agreed." Lysander rose from his chair and she tracked the movement with her eyes. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with the kind of presence that filled a room even when he was standing still. "I will send for the physician. She will tend to your wounds and provide something for the pain. After that, you may call your family and tell them whatever you wish." He paused, one hand on the doorframe, and looked back at her. "Except my location. That information is protected by laws older than your country. If you reveal it, even to your loved ones, there will be consequences." "What kind of consequences?" "The kind that would break your heart and mine." His expression was grave, all traces of gentleness gone. "Do not test me on this. Katherine, I am fond of you already, but my duty to my people comes before any personal attachment. Speak of this place to outsiders, and I will be forced to erase their memories, or worse." The threat hung in the air between them, cold and final. Katherine swallowed hard and nodded. She believed him. More than that, she understood him. He was a king, and kings protected their kingdoms above all else. She could hardly fault him for that, even if it meant keeping secrets from her own family. "I won't tell them," she promised. "But they'll want to know where I am. Tell them you are recovering at a private facility. Tell them you were rescued by a stranger who wishes to remain anonymous. Tell them whatever story brings you peace, so long as it does not lead them here." He stepped through the doorway, then paused. "I will return soon. Do not attempt to leave this room. The passages beyond are a labyrinth, and you would be lost within minutes." Then he was gone, and Katherine was alone. She sat on the bed, her burned feet throbbing, her lungs aching with every breath, and tried to make sense of the night. Hours ago she had been sleeping peacefully in her childhood bedroom, dreaming of nothing in particular. Now she was trapped in an underground palace, held captive by a vampire king who looked at her as though she were something precious and fragile. It was insane. All of it. But as she lay back against the silk pillows and stared up at the canopy above her, Katherine couldn't shake the memory of Lysander's face in the firelight, his eyes wide with something that looked almost like wonder. He had been afraid for her. She had seen it in every line of his body as he carried her away from the flames. A creature who had lived for centuries, who commanded the loyalty of an entire hidden society, had been afraid for her. She didn't know what to do with that information. She didn't know what it meant, but some part of her, deep and instinctive, wanted to find out. The physician arrived 10 minutes later, a woman who introduced herself as Dr. Isolde Corvinus. She was vampire too, with the same pale skin and silver eyes as Lysander, though her hair was black as ink and cut in a sharp bob that framed her face. She moved with brisk efficiency, examining Katherine's feet and listening to her breathing with instruments that looked both ancient and strangely advanced. "You were fortunate," Dr. Corvinus said as she applied a salve to Katherine's burns that smelled of mint and something darker, something old. "Another minute in that fire and your lungs would have been permanently damaged. As it is, you will make a full recovery." She wrapped Katherine's feet in soft bandages, her touch gentle despite her clinical demeanor. "His Majesty was right to bring you here. Our methods are faster than human medicine and far more effective." "His Majesty," Katherine repeated, testing the words. "That's really what you call him? It's not just a title." "Lysander Drakul is the king of the Northern Territories. He has held that position for nearly 300 years. Dr. Corvinus packed her supplies back into a leather bag that looked older than the United States. "He is the most powerful vampire on this continent, and one of the oldest. You should feel honored by his attention." "I feel kidnapped." "You should feel grateful." The doctor's eyes flashed just for a moment, and Katherine saw the predator beneath the professional mask. "There are many among our kind who would have let you burn, human. Lysander risked exposure and political complications to save you. The least you could do is show some appreciation." Katherine bristled at the rebuke, but before she could respond, Lysander's voice cut through the tension. "That will be enough, Isolde." He stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Dr. Corvinus bowed her head and gathered her things without another word. She left quickly, closing the door behind her, and Lysander crossed the room to stand beside the bed. "She meant no offense," he said. "My people are protective of me, sometimes to a fault. She thinks I'm ungrateful. She thinks you are frightened, and she is right." He held out his phone, the expensive black device she had seen in the car. "Call your family, ease their worry and your own." Katherine took the phone with shaking hands. She dialed her mother's number from memory and waited through 3 rings before a familiar voice answered, raw with tears and desperation. "Hello, Mom, it's me. I'm alive." The sound that came through the speaker was half sob, half prayer. "Katherine. Oh God, Katherine, where are you? We thought you were dead. The fire department searched the entire East Wing, but there was nothing left, and we couldn't find you anywhere. I got out. Someone pulled me out of the house before it collapsed." Katherine's throat tightened, and she had to force the next words past the lump. "I'm safe, Mom. I promise. I'm at a private medical facility. They're taking care of my injuries." "What injuries? How badly are you hurt?" "Mostly smoke inhalation. Some burns on my feet. Nothing life-threatening." She glanced up at Lysander, who was watching her with that same intense focus. "The doctors say I'll be fine in a few days." "Which facility?" "I'll come right now. Your father and I need to see you." "I can't tell you that. The person who rescued me wants to remain anonymous. He asked that I respect his privacy." The lie felt heavy on her tongue, but she forced herself to continue. "I'll come home as soon as I'm well enough to travel. 3 or 4 days at most. I just needed you to know I'm alive and safe." Her mother argued, of course. She demanded names and addresses, threatened to call every hospital in the state, swore that she wouldn't rest until she had her daughter back. Katherine weathered the storm of maternal panic with as much patience as she could muster, repeating the same reassurances over and over until her mother finally, reluctantly, accepted that Katherine was beyond her reach for the moment. "I love you," Katherine said when the conversation finally wound down. "Tell Dad and Thomas that I'm okay. Tell them I'll be home soon." "I love you too, sweetheart, so much. Please be careful." "I will, I promise." She ended the call and handed the phone back to Lysander. Her hands were trembling, and she pressed them flat against her thighs to hide the shaking. There, I did what you asked. Are you satisfied? No. He set the phone aside and sat down on the edge of the bed, close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from his body. You are crying, she hadn't realized. But he was right. Tears were streaming down her face, hot and fast, carrying with them all the terror and confusion of the night. She tried to wipe them away, but they kept coming, and eventually she gave up and just let herself weep. Lysander didn't speak. He didn't tell her to stop or try to comfort her with empty platitudes. He simply sat beside her, solid and present, until the tears finally slowed and she could breathe again without her chest hitching. I'm sorry, she said, her voice hoarse. I don't usually fall apart like this. You survived a fire and learned that vampires are real in the same night. I think you are entitled to fall apart. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. His skin was cold, but the gesture was gentle. You are stronger than you know, Katherine Foster. Most humans would still be screaming. Maybe I'm just in shock. Perhaps. Or perhaps you are simply extraordinary. He withdrew his hand and stood. You should rest now. Dr. Corvinus left a draft for the pain. It will help you sleep. I've slept enough. I want answers. Katherine pushed herself up straighter, ignoring the way her feet throbbed in protest. You said you felt something when you saw me in the fire. What did you mean? Why would you, of all people, care about a random human? Lysander was silent for a long moment, his back to her as he stared into the fireplace. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost reluctant. There is a phenomenon among my kind. It is rare, perhaps 1 in 1,000 experiences it, but it is real. We call it the recognition. It is the moment when a vampire encounters someone, mortal or immortal, who resonates with their soul. A person who feels like home, like destiny, like the answer to a question they did not know they were asking. Katherine's heart began to pound. You think I'm your, what, soulmate? I do not know what you are. He turned to face her, and the vulnerability in his expression stole her breath. I only know that when I saw you tonight, every instinct I possessed demanded that I save you, and when I held you in my arms, I felt a peace I have not known in 3 centuries. You are a mystery to me, Katherine, but you are not random. Of that much I am certain. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know what to feel. This was too much, too fast, too impossible. They had met hours ago, under the worst possible circumstances. He didn't know her. She didn't know him. And yet she couldn't deny the pull she felt toward him, the safety she had experienced in his arms, the way her heart skipped when he said her name. This is crazy, she whispered. Yes, he smiled then, just a slight curve of his lips, but it transformed his face from austere to almost boyish. But sometimes the most important things are. Katherine fell asleep that night with her mind racing and her feet aching, and the memory of Lysander's smile burned into her thoughts like a brand. She woke the next morning to find him sitting in the chair beside her bed, reading a book that looked older than printing presses. He glanced up when she stirred, and something warm flickered in his silver eyes. Good morning, he said, as though this were a perfectly normal situation. How do you feel? Like I was in a fire. She sat up slowly, testing her body. The pain in her feet had diminished to a dull throb and her lungs didn't burn quite as badly. Better than yesterday, though. Dr. Corvinus will be pleased. She takes pride in her work. He closed the book and set it aside. Are you hungry? I can have food brought. I'm starving, actually. Katherine realized as she said it that she couldn't remember the last time she had eaten. Yesterday's dinner, probably, before the world went up in flames. But I thought vampires didn't eat human food. We do not need it, but we can consume it if we choose. I keep a fully stocked kitchen for mortal guests. He stood and moved to the door, opening it to speak to someone outside. Katherine heard a murmur of voices, too low for her to make out words, and then Lysander returned. Breakfast will arrive shortly. In the meantime, if you feel strong enough, you may wish to bathe. I am told the experience is quite soothing. Katherine glanced toward the bathroom, toward the massive tub she had glimpsed last night. The idea of sinking into hot water was almost painfully appealing. I don't have any clothes. There are garments in the wardrobe. I took the liberty of estimating your size and having appropriate attire provided. He must have seen the alarm on her face because he added quickly, nothing was taken from your home. These are new items, purchased this morning from shops in the city above. If they do not fit or do not suit your taste, I will have others brought. She should have been angry about the presumption. Instead, she found herself oddly touched. He had thought about her comfort, her needs, in a way that went beyond mere duty. Thank you, she said, and meant it. You are welcome. He moved toward the door again. I will give you privacy. When you are dressed and have eaten, I would like to show you something, if you are amenable. Show me what? My world. His smile was slight but genuine. You have been brought into our realm with no preparation and no choice. The least I can do is help you understand what that means. Katherine found herself nodding before she had fully considered the implications. She was curious, she realized. Terrified, yes, but curious too. How many people got the chance to see the hidden world of vampires? How many were offered a glimpse behind the veil? All right, she said. I'd like that. Lysander's smile widened, and for just a moment he looked almost human. Almost. The clothes in the wardrobe fit perfectly, which should have been creepy but was mostly just impressive. Katherine selected a pair of dark jeans and a soft sweater in deep green, along with socks thick enough to cushion her bandaged feet. By the time she emerged from the bathroom, clean and dressed and feeling almost normal, breakfast had arrived on a wheeled cart. Eggs, toast, fruit, and coffee that smelled like heaven. She ate alone, perched on the edge of the bed, while Lysander waited outside the room. It was a small kindness, giving her space and privacy, and she appreciated it more than she could say. When she was finished, she opened the door to find him leaning against the opposite wall, his white hair spilling over his shoulders and his eyes distant with thought. "Ready?" he asked, straightening. "As I'll ever be." He led her through a series of corridors that twisted and turned in ways that made her head spin. The stone walls were carved with symbols she didn't recognize, patterns that seemed to shift in the flickering lantern light. They passed other vampires along the way, men and women who bowed their heads to Lysander and stared at Katherine with undisguised curiosity. She kept her chin up and her expression neutral, determined not to show how intimidated she felt. Finally, they emerged into a vast chamber that took her breath away. It was a throne room, though unlike any she had ever imagined. The ceiling soared 50 feet overhead, supported by columns carved to look like twisted trees. The floor was polished black marble, and at the far end of the space sat a throne made of dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Tapestries hung on the walls, depicting scenes of battles and hunts and ceremonies that must have taken place centuries ago. "This is where you rule," Katherine said softly. "This is where I hold court." Lysander walked beside her, his hands clasped behind his back. "Twice a month I meet with the lords and ladies of my territory to discuss matters of law and governance. Disputes are settled, alliances are forged, justice is dispensed. It is tedious work but necessary. It's beautiful." She moved closer to one of the tapestries, studying the figures woven into the fabric. They were vampires, she realized, with their pale skin and silver eyes. But they were surrounded by humans who looked up at them with expressions of awe rather than fear. Is this how it used to be? Vampires and humans living together openly? Long ago, yes. Before your kind grew too numerous and too powerful to be controlled. Before they developed weapons that could kill us and faiths that condemned us. His voice was wistful, touched with old grief. "There was a time when we were worshipped as gods, but that time is long past. Do you miss it?" "I miss the simplicity of it. The honesty." He turned away from the tapestry, his expression hardening. "Now we hide in the shadows and pretend to be human when we walk in your world. We feed carefully, take only what we need, and erase the memories of those we drink from. It is a half-life, Katherine. Necessary, but not satisfying." She thought about that as they continued through the underground palace. Lysander showed her libraries filled with books in languages she couldn't read. Armories stocked with weapons that looked both ancient and deadly. Gardens lit by some strange luminescence that mimicked sunlight without the danger. He introduced her to members of his court. Lady Seraphina, who managed diplomatic relations with other vampire territories. Lord Draven, who oversaw security and defense, and a dozen others whose names and titles blurred together in Katherine's mind. They all treated her with a strange mix of deference and suspicion. She was human, an outsider, but she was also under Lysander's protection, which meant something important in this world. She could see it in the way they spoke to her, careful and correct, never quite hostile but never quite welcoming either. By the time they returned to her room, Katherine's head was spinning with information and her feet were aching again. She sank onto the bed with a grateful sigh, and Lysander took his customary seat in the chair by the fire. "That was overwhelming," she admitted. "I imagine so. You have learned more about my kind in a few hours than most humans discover in a lifetime." He tilted his head, studying her. "Are you frightened? A little?" "Mostly, I'm just confused." She met his eyes, searching for answers in those silver depths. "You're showing me all of this, treating me like a guest instead of a prisoner. Why?" "Because I want you to understand." He leaned forward, his expression intense. "If you are to stay here, even for a few days, you deserve to know the truth about who and what we are. You deserve to make informed decisions about your safety and your future." "My future." The words hung heavy in the air. "You're talking like I have a choice to make. You do." His voice was quiet, almost gentle. "When you are healed, I will return you to your family as I promised. But there is another option, if you are willing to consider it." Katherine's heart began to pound. "What option?" "You could stay, not as a prisoner but as my guest, as someone who has chosen to be here." He held up a hand before she could interrupt. "I am not asking for an answer now. I am simply telling you that the possibility exists. If you wish to learn more about our world, to explore this connection between us, my home is open to you." "You're asking me to give up my life, my family, my friends, my whole world." I am asking you to consider expanding your world, not abandoning it. He rose from his chair and knelt beside the bed, bringing his face level with hers. You could still see your family, still maintain your relationships with the people you love. But you would also have access to something most humans never experience. Knowledge, power, a community that has existed for millennia. And you would have me if that is something you desire. Catherine's breath caught. The way he looked at her, the vulnerability beneath the regal bearing, made something twist in her chest. She barely knew him, but she couldn't deny the pull between them. The sense that this moment, this choice, would define the rest of her life. I need time to think, she said. Of course. He stood, putting distance between them, and some of the intensity faded from his expression. Take all the time you need. As I said, I am not asking for an answer today. But they both knew the question had been asked, and Katherine spent the rest of the day wrestling with it, turning it over and over in her mind as she rested and healed, and tried to imagine what her life might look like if she chose to walk deeper into Lysander's world. That night she dreamed of fire again. But this time, when the flames surrounded her, Lysander was there, pulling her into his arms and carrying her away. She woke with tears on her face and the memory of his touch burning on her skin. The second day in the underground palace, Katherine felt strong enough to walk without help. Her feet still hurt, but the pain was manageable, and she was tired of being confined to one room. Lysander offered to accompany her on another tour, and this time she accepted with something approaching eagerness. He took her to the deepest levels of the complex, where the stone was older and the air tasted of earth and ancient magic. They walked through tunnels that had been carved by hand long before modern tools existed, and Katherine trailed her fingers along the walls, marveling at the craftsmanship. "How old is this place?" she asked. "Parts of it date back nearly 2,000 years. Long before your continent was colonized by Europeans, my ancestors had established strongholds in the Old World. When we came here, fleeing persecution and war, we brought our knowledge with us. This city is built on the bones of our history." He paused beside a door carved with intricate symbols. "Would you like to see something extraordinary?" "Always." He opened the door and Katherine stepped into a cavern that stole her breath. The space was enormous, easily the size of a cathedral, and it was filled with light. Not the flickering warmth of lanterns or candles, but a cool silvery luminescence that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Crystals grew in massive clusters from floor to ceiling, each one pulsing with a gentle glow that cast shifting shadows across the stone. "This is the heart of the court," Lysander said softly. "It is the source of our power, the well from which we draw our strength. Every vampire in my territory is connected to this place, bound by blood and magic to the light you see before you." Katherine walked forward, mesmerized. She could feel something emanating from the crystals, a kind of energy that raised the hair on her arms and made her skin tingle. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "It is more than beautiful, it is sacred." He came to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "I have never brought a human here before. This place is forbidden to outsiders on pain of death, but I wanted you to see it. I wanted you to understand what you would be joining if you chose to stay." She turned to look at him, startled. "Why risk breaking your own laws for me?" "Because the law exists to protect us from those who would exploit or betray us. And you are not one of those people." His hand found hers, cold fingers wrapping around her warm ones. "From the moment I saw you, Katherine, I knew you were different, special. I do not understand why or how, but I feel it in my bones. You belong here in this world with me, and I am willing to risk everything to prove it to you." Catherine's heart was hammering so hard she was sure he could hear it. They were standing in a cavern of glowing crystals, surrounded by ancient magic, and a vampire king was telling her she belonged with him. It was insane, it was impossible, it was the most romantic thing that had ever happened to her. "Lysander," she started, but he shook his head. "You do not need to answer yet. I only ask that you keep an open mind." He squeezed her hand gently, then released it. "Come. There is more to see." They spent the rest of the day exploring the palace, and with each hour Katherine felt herself falling deeper under its spell. She met more of Lysander's people, learned their customs and their history, and slowly began to understand the complexity of the world she had stumbled into. Vampires were not the monsters of legend. They were people, immortal and powerful, but still capable of love and loyalty and all the messy emotions that made humans human. And Lysander was unlike anyone she had ever met. He was patient and kind, fiercely protective but never controlling. He listened when she spoke, valued her opinions even when they differed from his own, and looked at her as though she were the most fascinating creature he had ever encountered. By the time they returned to her room that evening, Katherine was exhausted but exhilarated. She sat on the bed, pulling off her socks to examine her feet, and was pleased to find that the bandages were clean and the pain had faded to a dull ache. "Dr. Corvinus will be pleased with your progress," Lysander said from his chair. "You heal quickly, thanks to vampire medicine." She flexed her toes experimentally. I should be able to go home tomorrow, shouldn't I? If that is what you wish. His voice was carefully neutral, but she could hear the tension beneath it. I will not stop you. Katherine looked up at him, at his pale, perfect face and his guarded expression. He was giving her a choice, just as he had promised. No pressure, no manipulation. Just an open door and the freedom to walk through it or turn away. She thought about her family, about the life she had left behind. She thought about her job offer, her friends, the comfortable, predictable existence she had been planning. None of it had changed. All of it was waiting for her, just a phone call and a car ride away. But when she tried to imagine herself back in that world, tried to picture returning to normal after everything she had seen and felt, the image wouldn't come into focus. How could she go back to being ordinary Katherine Foster, art history graduate and dutiful daughter, when she had walked through a vampire palace and stood in a cavern of glowing crystals? How could she pretend this had never happened? More importantly, how could she walk away from Lysander? I don't know what I want, she admitted. Part of me wants to run home and forget any of this ever happened. But another part, he prompted gently. Another part thinks I'd regret it for the rest of my life if I left now. She met his eyes, and the vulnerability in her own expression made her feel raw and exposed. I've known you for 2 days, Lysander. That's not enough time to make a decision this big. Then do not make it yet. He rose from his chair and crossed to kneel beside the bed just as he had the night before. Stay one more day. Give yourself time to be certain. If you still wish to leave after that, I will take you home myself and ask nothing more of you. But if I stay, then we will have time to explore whatever this is between us. Time to see if the recognition is real or simply a fantasy brought on by extraordinary circumstances. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone with infinite gentleness. I would like that time, Katherine. I would like the chance to know you, truly know you, without the pressure of deadlines or obligations, but only if that is what you want as well. Katherine leaned into his touch, her eyes drifting closed. His skin was cold, always cold, but she was starting to find comfort in that chill. It was solid and real, an anchor in a world that had become surreal and dreamlike. One more day, she said softly, and then I'll decide. One more day, he agreed. He left her then, giving her space to rest and think. But as Katherine lay in the dark, staring up at the canopy above her bed, she already knew what her decision would be. She was falling in love with this strange, impossible man. Falling in love with his world and the way he looked at her, as though she held all the answers to questions he had been asking for centuries. Tomorrow she would tell him yes. Tomorrow she would choose to stay. But tonight she let herself savor the anticipation, the delicious uncertainty of standing on the edge of forever. The third day dawned with Katherine waking to find a note slipped under her door. The handwriting was elegant, flowing script that looked like it belonged in a museum. There is a formal gathering tonight in the throne room. The court wishes to meet you properly. If you are willing, I would be honored to present you to my people. Attire has been provided. Katherine found the dress hanging in the wardrobe, and her breath caught when she saw it. It was midnight blue, the same color as the silk bedding, with a fitted bodice and a skirt that flowed like water. The fabric shimmered when she moved it, catching the light in a way that seemed almost magical. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. She spent the afternoon preparing, bathing in the massive tub and carefully styling her hair with supplies that had appeared in the bathroom. When she finally slipped into the dress, she barely recognized herself in the mirror. She looked like someone out of a fairy tale, elegant and ethereal and entirely out of place in the modern world. She looked like she belonged here. A knock at the door made her jump. She opened it to find Lysander standing in the hallway, and the expression on his face when he saw her was worth every moment of preparation. His eyes widened, his lips parting in surprise, and for several heartbeats he simply stared. Katherine, he said finally, and her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. You are breathtaking. You clean up pretty well yourself. It was an understatement. He wore formal attire that looked both ancient and timeless. Black pants, a black shirt with silver embroidery, and a coat that fell to his knees. His white hair was pulled back from his face, revealing the sharp lines of his features, and his silver eyes seemed to glow in the dim light. He looked every inch a king. He offered his arm and she took it, letting him lead her through the corridors to the throne room. She could hear voices echoing ahead, the murmur of many conversations blending together, and her nerves kicked up another notch. There will be close to 200 vampires present, Lysander said quietly. Do not be alarmed. They are curious about you, but they will not harm you. You are under my protection, and they know what that means. What does it mean? It means that any who threaten you threaten me, and no one in my territory is fool enough to make an enemy of their king. His hand covered hers where it rested on his arm, cold and reassuring. You are safe, Katherine. I swear it. They entered the throne room and conversation died. Every head turned toward them, 200 pairs of silver eyes fixing on Katherine with varying degrees of interest and suspicion. She forced herself to keep walking, to hold her head high. As Lysander led her to the dais where his throne sat, he didn't sit. Instead, he turned to face the assembled vampires, keeping Katherine at his side, and spoke in a voice that carried through the vast chamber. "My people, 3 nights ago I witnessed an act of senseless violence. A manor burned, and within it a woman was trapped. I could have turned away. I could have let the flames take her and continued on my path. But when I saw her, I felt something I have not felt in 300 years. He paused, and the silence was absolute. I felt the recognition. A ripple of shock ran through the crowd. Katherine heard whispers, saw eyes widen, and understood that Lysander had just made a profound announcement. "This is Katherine Foster," he continued. "She is human, yes, but she is also extraordinary. She has seen our world, walked our halls, and earned my respect in the short time she has been here. I have offered her a place among us, and tonight I present her to you as my honored guest. Treat her with the courtesy she deserves, and know that her safety is paramount to me." He turned to Katherine then, his expression softening. "You are welcome here for as long as you wish to stay, and if you choose to leave, you will do so with my blessing and my protection. The choice is yours and yours alone." Katherine's throat tightened with emotion. He was giving her an out, even now, even after making such a public declaration. He was letting everyone in this room know that she was free to choose, that her will mattered more than his desire. She loved him for it. "I choose to stay," she said, loud enough for the assembled vampires to hear. "For now, at least. I want to learn more about your world, about all of you, and about him." She looked up at Lysander, and the hope that flooded his expression made her chest ache. "If that's all right." "It is more than all right." His hand found hers, fingers lacing together, and he raised their joined hands for all to see. "Let it be known, Katherine Foster is under my protection. She is to be treated as an honored member of this court. Anyone who harms her will answer to me personally." The vampires bowed, a coordinated movement that was both beautiful and slightly eerie. When they straightened, Katherine saw acceptance on many faces, curiosity on others, and wariness on a few. But no hostility. No one dared show hostility. Not with Lysander's declaration still echoing in the air. The gathering that followed was both terrifying and exhilarating. Katherine met dozens of vampires, each one eager to introduce themselves and learn about the human who had captured their king's attention. She answered questions about her life, her family, her education, all while acutely aware of Lysander's presence beside her. He never left her side, his hand a constant anchor at the small of her back or wrapped around hers. Lady Seraphina approached near the end of the evening, her dark hair piled atop her head in an elaborate style, and her silver eyes sharp with intelligence. "You have caused quite a stir, Miss Foster," she said, her voice light but probing. "The recognition is rare indeed. Some of us have lived for centuries without experiencing it." "I'm not sure I fully understand what it means," Katherine admitted. "It means that His Majesty has found his match, his equal, in a way that transcends mortality or species." Seraphina's expression softened slightly. "It is a gift, though it comes with complications. You are human, he is not. That divide will create challenges you cannot yet imagine." "Are you trying to warn me away?" "No. I am simply preparing you for reality." Seraphina glanced at Lysander, who was speaking with Lord Draven a few feet away. "He is a good king and a better man. If you care for him at all, you will consider carefully what a life with him would entail. Immortality is not easily granted, and mortality is not easily endured by those who watch their loved ones age and die." Katherine swallowed hard. She hadn't let herself think that far ahead, but Seraphina was right. If she stayed, if this thing between her and Lysander grew into something real, they would eventually have to confront the fact that she would grow old while he remained frozen in time, unless she chose to become like him. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. Vampirism. Immortality. She had seen enough of this world to know that it wasn't all glamour and power. There were sacrifices, dangers, prices to be paid. Could she really give up her humanity for a man she had known for 3 days? "You look pale," Lysander said, appearing at her side. He shot a sharp look at Seraphina. "What did you say to her?" "Only the truth." Seraphina bowed slightly. "Forgive me if I overstepped, Your Majesty. I meant no harm. Leave us." His tone brooked no argument, and Seraphina retreated without another word. Lysander turned to Katherine, concern etched into every line of his face. "Are you all right? Do you need to rest?" "I'm fine. Just overwhelmed." She managed a weak smile. "This is a lot to process. Come, the gathering is nearly over. Let me take you back to your room." He led her from the throne room, and the cool silence of the corridors was a relief after the press of so many bodies and voices. Katherine leaned against Lysander as they walked, grateful for his strength. "Seraphina was talking about the future," she said when they reached her door. "About what would happen if I stayed permanently. She had no right to burden you with such concerns." Lysander's jaw was tight with anger. "We have time to discuss such matters, years if necessary, do we?" Katherine turned to face him fully. "You're immortal, Lysander, I'm not. If this becomes something real, we'll have to face that eventually. Eventually is not today." He cupped her face in both hands, tilting her head up so she had no choice but to meet his eyes. "Today, I am simply grateful that you are here, that you chose to stay even for a little while longer. Do not let fear of the future steal the joy of the present." Is that advice from 300 years of experience? It is advice from a man who has lost too much by worrying about what might be instead of cherishing what is. His thumb brushed across her lower lip and her breath hitched. "Stay in this moment with me, Katherine. Just for tonight. Tomorrow we can worry about the rest." She nodded, unable to form words. The way he was looking at her, the tenderness in his touch, made her feel like the most precious thing in the world. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned down and pressed his lips to her forehead. The kiss was chaste, almost reverent, but it sent heat flooding through Katherine's body. She swayed forward, and suddenly his arms were around her, pulling her close. They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other, and Katherine felt something settle in her chest, something that felt like certainty. "Thank you," she whispered against his shoulder, "for everything. For saving me, for showing me this world, for giving me a choice. You never need to thank me for that." His voice rumbled through his chest, vibrating against her. "You deserve all of it and more." Eventually, reluctantly, they pulled apart. Lysander waited until she was safely inside her room before he left, and Katherine stood with her back against the door for several minutes, her heart racing and her mind whirling. She was falling in love with him. There was no denying it now, and the terrifying, exhilarating truth was that she thought he might be falling in love with her too. The fourth day, Katherine woke with a sense of purpose. She dressed quickly in the clothes Lysander had provided, comfortable pants and a soft shirt, and went in search of him. She found him in the library, surrounded by books and maps, and the sight of him bent over his work made something warm bloom in her chest. "Good morning," she said from the doorway. He looked up, and his face lit with a smile that was becoming familiar. "Good morning. Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in days." She moved into the room, perching on the edge of the desk. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything. What happens now?" I've decided to stay, at least for a while. But what does that actually look like? Do I just live down here in the palace forever? Do I ever get to go back to the surface?" "You can do whatever you wish." He set down the book he had been reading and gave her his full attention. "If you want to return to your family, to maintain your relationships in the human world, I will ensure you have safe passage and protection. If you prefer to remain here and immerse yourself in our society, that is also acceptable. The choice is entirely yours. What would you prefer?" "I would prefer to spend as much time with you as possible." His honesty was refreshing, if a bit overwhelming. "But I do not want you to sacrifice your humanity for my sake. Your family loves you. They deserve to see you, to know that you are well. Perhaps we could find a balance. Time here, time there, until you decide where you truly belong." Katherine considered that. It made sense, and it gave her room to breathe, to figure out what she wanted without the pressure of making an immediate permanent decision. "I'd like that. But I should probably call my mom again. Let her know I'm still alive and planning to come home soon." "Of course." He produced his phone and handed it over. "Take as long as you need." Katherine stepped into the hallway for privacy and dialed her mother's number. The conversation was easier this time, her mother's panic having given way to cautious relief. Katherine promised to come home within the week, to explain everything in person, and skillfully deflected questions about where she was and who was caring for her. When she returned to the library, Lysander was waiting with an expression of patient curiosity. "How are they?" "Worried, but okay. The manor is a total loss, but everyone got out safely. They're staying with my aunt in the city while they figure out what to do next." She handed back the phone. "I told my mom I'd be home in a few days. I need to see them, to reassure them in person." "I understand. I will arrange transportation whenever you are ready." He paused, then added carefully, "Will you come back after you see them?" "Yes." The answer came without hesitation, surprising even her. "I want to learn more about this world, about you. I'm not ready to walk away yet." The relief on his face was palpable. "I am glad. There is so much I want to show you, so much I want to share. But I also want you to be certain that this is what you want, not what you feel obligated to do." "I'm certain." She moved closer, drawn by the pull that had been growing stronger since the moment he first carried her from the fire. "I don't understand it completely, this recognition thing, but I feel it too. Something connects us, Lysander, and I want to see where it leads." He stood, closing the distance between them in 2 strides, and suddenly his hands were in her hair and his lips were on hers. The kiss was fierce, desperate, full of days of restraint finally breaking down. Katherine gasped against his mouth, her hands fisting in his shirt, and kissed him back with equal fervor. He was cold, his lips and tongue like ice against her heat, but the contrast was intoxicating. She felt consumed by him, by the passion in his touch and the hunger in the way he held her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were wild and his carefully maintained control was nowhere to be seen. "I have wanted to do that since the moment I first saw you," he admitted, his voice rough. "But I did not want to take advantage. You have been through so much, and I did not want you to feel pressured." "I don't feel pressured, I feel alive." She reached up to trace the line of his jaw, marveling at the smoothness of his skin. "Kiss me again." He did, slower this time, savoring rather than devouring. Katherine lost herself in the sensation, in the impossible reality of kissing a vampire king in a library beneath the city. It was madness, it was magic, it was everything she never knew she wanted. They spent the rest of the day together, talking and laughing and stealing kisses between conversations. Lysander told her stories of his long life, of empires that had risen and fallen, of wars he had fought and peace he had brokered. Katherine shared her own smaller but no less important stories, her childhood, her dreams, the person she hoped to become. By the time evening arrived, Katherine felt like she had known him for years rather than days. There was an ease between them now, a comfort that came from being truly seen and accepted. She understood finally what the recognition meant. It wasn't just attraction or even love, it was finding the other half of your soul. That night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Katherine made a decision. She would go home, yes. She would see her family and reassure them that she was safe. But then she would come back to this underground palace, to Lysander and his world, and she would stay as long as he would have her. And if that led to conversations about immortality and vampirism and forever, well, she would cross that bridge when she came to it. For now she was content to simply be happy. The fifth day, Lysander accompanied her to the surface. They emerged in a parking garage on the outskirts of the city, where his driver was waiting with the same sleek black car that had brought her here. Katherine blinked in the harsh fluorescent light, disoriented by the sudden return to the modern world. It felt like a dream, being back among concrete and cars and the distant sound of traffic. "Are you ready?" Lysander asked, his hand warm against her back. "As I'll ever be." She slid into the car and he joined her, sitting close enough that their thighs touched. The contact was grounding, a reminder that the past few days had been real. The drive to her aunt's house took 30 minutes. Katherine spent the time mentally rehearsing what she would say to her family. She couldn't tell them the truth, not all of it, but she could give them enough to ease their worry. She would say that she had been rescued by a private citizen who wished to remain anonymous, that she had been recovering in a secure location, and that she was planning to take some time off to process the trauma of the fire. All of it was true, in its way. When they pulled up outside the house, Katherine's mother was already on the porch, her face pale and drawn. She rushed down the steps as Katherine opened the car door, and then Katherine was engulfed in her mother's embrace, surrounded by the familiar scent of lavender and home. "Oh, sweetheart," her mother sobbed into her hair. "I was so scared, I thought we'd lost you." "I'm okay, Mom, I promise." Katherine hugged her back just as tightly, tears streaming down her own face. "I'm okay." Her father appeared next, then her younger brother Thomas, and for several minutes it was just the four of them, holding each other and crying and murmuring words of relief and love. When they finally pulled apart, Katherine's mother noticed the car idling at the curb and the pale figure sitting in the back seat. "Who is that?" she asked, her voice sharpening with suspicion. "The man who saved me." Katherine glanced back at Lysander, who was watching the reunion with an expression of quiet longing. "I should introduce you." She walked back to the car and opened the door. Lysander stepped out and Katherine saw her family's reactions. Her mother's surprise, her father's wariness, Thomas's outright awe. Lysander had that effect on people, she was learning. He was impossible to ignore. "Mom, Dad, Thomas, this is Lysander Drakul. He pulled me from the fire and has been taking care of me ever since." Katherine kept her voice steady, though her heart was pounding. "Lysander, this is my family. It is an honor to meet you." Lysander inclined his head, the gesture formal and oddly old-fashioned. "I am pleased that I was able to return your daughter to you safely. We owe you more than we can ever repay," Katherine's father said, stepping forward to shake Lysander's hand. "Thank you for saving her life. It was my privilege." Lysander's grip was firm but not crushing, and Katherine could see her father assessing him, trying to figure out what kind of man would go to such lengths for a stranger. "I hope she will continue to recover without complications." "Will you come inside?" her mother asked, already shifting into hostess mode. "Let us offer you some refreshment at least. It's the least we can do." Lysander glanced at Katherine, a question in his eyes. She nodded slightly, and he turned back to her mother with a small smile. "I would be delighted." They went inside and Katherine watched as Lysander charmed her family with the same effortless grace he showed in his own court. He accepted a cup of tea he would never drink, answered questions about himself with carefully crafted half-truths, and listened with genuine interest as Thomas excitedly described the firefighting effort. He was perfect, Katherine thought. perfect in a way that made her ache. After an hour, Lysander made his excuses to leave. Katherine walked him back to the car, grateful for a moment alone. "They love you very much," he said, leaning against the car door. "It is good to see. They're good people." Katherine wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warm afternoon. "I'm going to stay here tonight. Spend some time with them. But tomorrow you will come back to me." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "Yes, tomorrow I'll come back." She stepped closer, rising on her toes to press a kiss to his cheek. "Thank you for bringing me here, for understanding that I needed this, always." His hand came up to cradle her face, and the tenderness in his touch made her eyes sting with tears. "Take the time you need with your family, I will be waiting." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, and Katherine let herself sink into it. When he pulled away, she felt cold and bereft, already missing him. "Tomorrow," she promised. "Tomorrow," he agreed. She watched the car drive away, watched until it disappeared around the corner, and then she turned back to the house where her family was waiting. She spent the evening answering questions and reassuring them that she was truly okay. She let her mother fuss over her feet, which were nearly healed, and listened to her father discuss plans for rebuilding the manor. She played video games with Thomas and pretended that everything was normal. But when she lay in her childhood bed that night, staring at the glow in the dark stars on the ceiling, all she could think about was Lysander. About his smile and his touch, and the way he looked at her like she was the answer to every question he had ever asked. She was in love with him. Completely, irrevocably in love. And tomorrow she would tell him so. The next morning, Katherine packed a bag with clothes and essentials, trying to ignore her mother's worried looks. "I'm going back," she said over breakfast, "to the facility where I've been staying. I need more time to recover, and they have resources that can help me process everything that happened." "Can't you stay here?" her mother pleaded. "We just got you back." "I know, and I promise I'll visit regularly. But I need this, Mom. I need space to figure out who I am after something like this." It was true in its way. The fire had changed her, but not in the ways her family imagined. "Please understand." Her father placed a hand on her mother's shoulder. "Let her go, Linda. She's an adult. She knows what she needs." Katherine hugged them both, promising to call often and to come back for Sunday dinner. Then she ordered a car service, giving the driver the address of the parking garage where she had emerged with Lysander. When she arrived, he was waiting for her, leaning against his car with his white hair catching the dim fluorescent light. The sight of him made her heart skip, and she ran the last few steps, throwing herself into his arms. "I missed you," she said against his chest, breathing in his cold, clean scent. "I missed you as well." His arms wrapped around her, holding her close. Was it difficult, saying goodbye? "Not goodbye, just see you later." She pulled back to look at him. "I'm ready now, ready to really be part of your world." "Are you certain?" His silver eyes searched hers, looking for any hint of doubt. "There is no pressure, Katherine. You can take as much time as you need. I'm certain. I want this. I want you." She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I love you, Lysander. I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but I can't deny it anymore. I love you." His expression transformed, wonder and joy lighting his features from within. "Katherine," he breathed, and then he was kissing her, deep and passionate and full of promises. When they finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you too. I have loved you since the moment I first saw you in that window, surrounded by flames. You are my recognition, my miracle, my everything." Katherine laughed through her tears, giddy with happiness. "So what happens now?" "Now I take you home." He opened the car door for her. "Our home, and we begin the rest of our lives." They drove back through the city, down into the hidden passages, and Katherine felt her excitement building with every turn. This was it. This was the beginning of her new life, her new future. With Lysander by her side, she could face anything. When they arrived back at the palace, the vampires who saw them whispered and smiled. The news of their love had clearly spread, and Katherine found herself greeted with warmth and acceptance she hadn't expected. Lady Seraphina even pulled her aside to apologize for being harsh the other night. "I wanted to protect him," Seraphina explained, "but I can see now that he does not need protecting from you. You make him happy, and that is all that matters." "Thank you," Katherine said, meaning it. That night, Lysander hosted a small private dinner in Katherine's honor. Just the two of them in a dining room lit by hundreds of candles. They talked and laughed and planned the future, discussing how Katherine would divide her time between the vampire world and the human one, how they would navigate the challenges ahead. "Eventually," Lysander said carefully, "we will need to discuss the question of your mortality." "I know." Katherine reached across the table to take his hand, "and when that time comes, I'll be ready to have that conversation. But for now, can we just enjoy this? Enjoy being together without worrying about the future?" "I can do that." He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "I can enjoy every moment I have with you, for however long you give them to me." "Forever," Katherine said softly. "I want to give you forever." His eyes widened, hope and fear warring in their silver depths. You do not have to decide that now. I'm not deciding, I'm just telling you what I want. She stood and walked around the table to stand beside his chair. I want forever with you, Lysander. I want to be part of your world, fully and completely. I want to become like you so that we never have to say goodbye, Katherine. His voice was rough with emotion. Do you understand what you are saying? Becoming a vampire is not a simple matter. It is painful, dangerous, and irreversible. You would be giving up your humanity, your mortal life, everything you have ever known. I know. And I'm scared, but I'm more scared of losing you. She cupped his face in her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. You saved my life, Lysander. You gave me a reason to want to live when I was sure I was going to die. Let me spend that life with you for as long as we both shall exist. He pulled her into his lap, holding her as though she were made of glass. I will not transform you yet. It is too soon and you need time to be absolutely certain. But if in a year or 2 or 10, you still want this, I will give it to you. I will make you immortal, and I will love you for every moment of eternity. Promise? I swear it on my life and my crown. He kissed her then, soft and reverent. You are mine, Katherine Foster, today, tomorrow, and forever. And you're mine, she whispered back. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, planning a future that stretched out before them like an endless road. There would be challenges, Katherine knew. Obstacles and dangers and moments of doubt, but they would face them together, and that was all that mattered. 6 months later, Katherine stood in the throne room, surrounded by vampires who had become friends. She wore a gown of silver that matched Lysander's eyes, and on her finger was a ring carved from black diamond, ancient and priceless. My people, Lysander said, his voice carrying through the chamber. Today I have the honor of announcing my engagement to Katherine Foster. She has chosen to bind her life to mine, to become not just my consort but my partner in all things. In 2 years' time, when she is ready, she will undergo the transformation and join us as an immortal. Until then, she will serve as an advisor to the court and as my beloved companion. The vampires applauded, their acceptance complete. Katherine felt tears prick her eyes as she looked around at the faces that had become so familiar. She had found a home here in this impossible place. She had found love and purpose in a future she never could have imagined. Lysander took her hand, raising it to his lips. Are you happy? He asked quietly, just for her. Happier than I ever thought possible, she answered honestly. Then my life is complete. He pulled her close, and the court cheered as they kissed, sealing their promise to each other in front of all who mattered. Katherine thought back to that night 6 months ago, when flames had surrounded her and death had seemed certain. She thought about Lysander crashing through the window, his arms strong and sure as he carried her to safety. She thought about how he had refused to set her down for hours, how he had held her through the car ride and the arrival at the palace, how his embrace had been the only thing keeping her together as her world fell apart. He had saved her that night. But more than that, he had shown her that she was worth saving, that her life had value and meaning beyond anything she had previously understood. He had given her a gift more precious than immortality. He had given her love, and in return she would give him everything. Her heart, her soul, her future. All of it freely given, joyfully offered. Forever was a long time. But with Lysander by her side, Katherine knew it wouldn't be long enough. 2 years later, on a night when the moon was dark and the stars were bright, Katherine Foster underwent the transformation. It was agony, just as Lysander had warned. Her body broke and rebuilt itself, her human blood replaced with something ancient and powerful. She screamed until her voice gave out, and through it all, Lysander held her hand, murmuring words of love and encouragement. When it was over, when she opened her eyes and saw the world through vampire sight, for the first time she understood. Everything was sharper, brighter, more vivid. She could hear heartbeats from miles away, smell emotions on the air, feel the pulse of magic in the earth beneath her feet. She was more than human now, she was something new, something extraordinary. And when she looked at Lysander, when she saw him through these new eyes, she fell in love with him all over again. How do you feel? He asked, his voice full of wonder. Alive, she said, and laughed at the irony. More alive than I ever was as a human. Welcome home, he whispered and kissed her. Katherine Foster, now Katherine Drakul, had been born in fire and reborn in blood. She had lost everything and gained the world. And as she stood in her husband's arms, surrounded by the family she had chosen and the love that would last forever, she knew that every moment of pain and fear had been worth it, because in the end, she had found exactly where she belonged, in the palace beneath the city, in the arms of a vampire king, in a love that would never die. And that was the greatest magic of all.